and good morning to members of the media and to the listening and viewing public. Thank you for joining us this morning for our midweek press briefing here at the UNC's headquarters. We take very seriously our commitment to continue to communicate with you through forums such as press conferences, our Monday night meetings, etc., and to keep you abreast of what is happening and what the opposition is doing in order to address the concerns being raised by members of the public. Whilst I was coming here this morning, I can't help but notice that the rains have begun since yesterday, and I want to tell you to be on the alert to listen to the propaganda from the PNM that's going to come forward, that if you want something done about flooding, you must pay property tax, because that's the next thing that they are coming to say. Because I have been getting reports from many parts of the country that nothing has been done proactively. Of course, year after year we face the same problem, but that nothing has been done proactively to really seriously address the issue of flooding. And with the rains having come down now, be prepared to hear from them that if you want the issue of flooding to be resolved, you must pay property tax, because that is the mantra of this government going into an election year, that property tax and you having to pay property tax will be the solution to all of your problems. I want to start off this morning. I was reading a bit and I came across some very interesting quotations, and it's funny that something from as far back as the 1920s is so relevant today. And it's actually some quotations from the 30th President of the United States, Mr. Calvin Coolidge, who was the president that presided over what was known in the U.S. as the Roaring Twenties, a period of economic growth and prosperity for that nation. And he said, "The property of the people belongs to the people. To take it from them by taxation cannot be justified except by urgent public necessity. Unless this principle be recognized, our country is no longer secure, our people no longer free." He went on at a meeting of business organizations in June of 1924 to say, "A government which lays taxes on the people not required by urgent public necessity and sound public policy is not a protector of liberty, but an instrument of tyranny." Ladies and gentlemen, I want to put forward today that what we have in this PNM administration is an instrument of tyranny taking the form of property tax. It is not simply an instrument of tyranny because of the fact that it is being imposed on citizens during a time of extreme hardship, during a time of economic decline. Our foreign reserves are low. Our GDP has fallen tremendously since this government took office. Food prices are escalating. That's not the only reason why this property tax is an instrument of tyranny. It is also an instrument of tyranny because the entire process behind the imposition of this property tax is flawed. It is fraught with inconsistencies. There is no clarity and there is no due process. And I will take you through a couple of those steps today as I address those issues and to tell you what the United National Congress is committed to doing. We have been working around the clock. We have been exploring. The political leader has given a mandate. You would have heard her at one of our last meetings, Monday night meetings in the Pointe-a-Pierre constituency, identifying persons who could be of assistance to citizens, including myself, and we have been working around the clock trying to figure out what we can do to best assist the citizenry in the face of the tyranny imposed upon them by this PNM administration. Let me start off by addressing some of the misinformation that the PNM would like to put out there as a distraction to you. They came to the Parliament to make some amendments to the Property Tax Act, and the entire focus of that government was not on accountability for the expenditure of taxes. It was not on how they plan to address all of the inconsistencies that exist in the valuation process. It was on saying that the UNC had planned to bring back property tax. In 2011, a bill was brought to the Parliament. It was laid, it was never debated, but the bill sought to repeal the dreaded 2009 Patrick Manning Property Tax Act and to reintroduce the old land and building tax system that was in effect for decades. And that bill, even though it was laid and it could have gone to debate, it never did. That is fact number one. Number two, it was announced in the 2014 budget statement delivered in September of 2013 by Minister Hawaii that the government was looking again at a revamped system of collecting property taxes. A revamped system, and that they would start with commercial and industrial taxes and then look at the old land and building tax regime in relation to property tax. For residential, it would not be property tax, it would be the land and building tax regime. That also never saw the light of day. And if you look at the debate in the Senate, we went to great lengths to dig up all of the articles from 2014 into 2015, where Minister Hawaii made it very clear that no further action would be taken by the cabinet in relation to that proposal, simply because he had consultations with businesses, with various stakeholders, and it was abandoned. It was essentially abandoned. But ladies and gentlemen, despite what the PNM may wish to put forward to you, the number one fact that you must remember and keep at the forefront of your mind is that not one single cent of tax was levied against your property, whether it was based on capital value, annual rental value, land and building tax, property tax, any kind of tax in relation to your property was levied by the UNC-led People's Partnership Government led by Kamla Persad-Bissessar. That was a policy position that the party had campaigned on, and we maintained it throughout the time that we occupied the seat of government. Today, we are here to say that we are opposed at this time to the collection of property tax, not just because of the economic circumstances, but because of the discrepancies raised by citizens in the valuation process and the collection process. We are demanding of the government today that this entire process be scrapped, halted, and a proper valuation exercise be undertaken before taxes are collected from citizens. Anything less than that is a form of tyranny opposed on the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. Minister Imber tries to deflect from all of the discrepancies that have been raised by members of the public, whether it is via media, social media, and different fora, to come to the parliament and say that he is bringing ease to the population with a 1% reduction. I want to say today that whether the rate is 2%, 3%, 5%, 0.5%, it doesn't matter, because the underlying valuation is incorrect. If your underlying valuation is incorrect and it is not transparent, then you can have no faith in the process that led to whatever percentage of taxation that the government proposes to impose upon you. Ladies and gentlemen, they continue to run from the real issues of people not wanting to pay more taxes for the lack of services that has been delivered by this government. In 9 years, this government cannot point to one single area within its administration where it has improved the delivery of services. Not water, not electricity, not they talk so much about the digitalization, and we were supposed to be getting free nationwide Wi-Fi. We are yet to see those things. Every year it is a series of promises. The delivery of social services has not improved. The delivery of education has not improved. The delivery of our all of the services that you depend on. Don't even let us get started on the state of the roads and national security. So why does the government expect that a population would want and be willing to come forward and pay additional taxes when their track record on the delivery of services has been so very, very poor and lacking in so many critical areas? Those are the real issues that they are unwilling to face. They will create deflections by talking about people having property abroad and willing to pay taxes. I'm certain that people abroad who pay taxes, and I've done quite a bit of research into the level of accountability and transparency that exists when you look at the councils in the United Kingdom, when you look at the various counties in the United States where taxes are paid, you see every single year the breakdown of your taxes and how much of it, what percentage goes into school districts, fire services, police departments, and other types of infrastructural developments and all of those things. We have not had audited financial statements for many of the regional corporations where they propose that these taxes would be going to. We have not had audited financial statements from many of them for a number of years. In fact, I think up to the other day I was hearing financial statements being laid for the year 2018 in relation to one corporation being laid in the parliament. So that is how backward they are in terms of accounting to you for monies collected and spent through the Ministry of when the Ministry of Rural Development releases monies to the corporations. And therefore, we are saying that without that level of accountability and transparency, both in the calculation, the collection, and the expenditure of taxes, no new taxes should be imposed, and especially levied against the property of citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. The fact remains that under previous administrations, you had new airports being built. You had 100 schools being built under Kamala Prasad Bissessa's watch. You had, I think it was 9 police stations. You had VAT being removed from 7,000 food items. We had state-of-the-art children's hospitals being constructed, and no new taxes were introduced. So the PNM must stop making the excuse that they cannot run the country without introducing new taxes upon this administration. In the 1995 Bastille Pandey administration, when oil was $9 a barrel, this country was being run. This country was being run. And we saw more development then than we've seen under the last 9 years of this Keith Rowley PNM-led administration. In addition to property tax, they have also introduced online purchase taxes. And now they are coming to the parliament to say that I think it was I raised the issue of water supply, they are saying, well, that is why property tax should be collected so that the regional corporations can provide you with a truck-borne water supply. I heard Minister Al-Rawi go to open a cemetery and say that if you want your cemeteries to be maintained, then you must pay property tax to allow the regional corporation to maintain your cemeteries. For hundreds of years, we have had cemeteries in existence in Trinidad and Tobago. How were they maintained? How were they maintained when oil was $9 a barrel? You know how they were maintained? We did not have squandermania, wastage, and corruption like we've had under this administration. And those are the facts. So this 1% mama guy of a reduction in taxes is the first that you can expect to see in many election gimmicks. I think MP Padarath has exposed some of the other gimmicks that you could expect with respect to desalination plants. He has exposed some of their hypocrisy. They think that everybody has a 48-hour memory like them, and that everybody will forget what they say. But they have no consistency in their policies. And this whole issue of a 1% reduction in taxation, I want to tell you that that is also a gimmick that they will hope you will soon forget, because we know what is going to come from them. Why does the 1% reduction not make any sense? Because of the valuation process. The amendments brought by the PNM after we challenged the valuation exercise conducted in 2017 and took them to court allowed them to now enforce this valuation process and to conduct valuation exercises. And I want to warn the population about the fact that when you see things being done in the parliament and we raise concerns like we did in 2018, and you do not take the time to understand the consequences of what is happening, you make a mistake. Property tax is the epitome of what we have been saying, which is that elections have consequences. Because what they did in 2018, and we warned you about what they were doing, and you did not believe them, and persons perhaps bought into the idea that somehow this property tax would be fair and would be used for improve the quality of lives of people, voted them back into office into 2020 and allowed them to roll out this property tax process. And today, we are all paying the price for those very bad decisions made in 2020. The amendments which were brought basically remove, for example, the input of the Tax Appeal Board. And this whole issue of objections to the valuation exercise, the minister says it will now be extended to 6 months from the date of the valuation. Well, Minister, persons would have received their evaluation more than 6 months ago. At that time, it was only you had about 21 days or 28 days, roughly a month, in order to file your objection. What happens to those persons? Would people who are now getting their evaluation have up to 6 months to submit a challenge, or would they now be covered by the 6 month period? You have to make it very clear. Again, you have such inconsistencies and discrepancies in your own policies that you cannot roll them out properly and in a manner that is fair to all citizens. I am calling on the government as of today's date, if they are not willing to scrap this entire process, to at least give every single citizen a 6-month window to file their objections. People must have the opportunity to file their objections. And that those objections should be filed at the Evaluations Division. I understand that they have a form, but I will get into some of the details about what is required for that objection to be filed. The minister says that he began the process because over 50% of residential properties had been valued. Prior to 2018 and thereafter, certain amendments were made. You were required to value 50% of all properties in Trinidad and Tobago. The government's thirst and their desire to get into your pockets as quickly as they can and to come against your homes and to move against your homes and impose these draconian taxes on your homes led them to make a change in the law to say it's only 50% of the residential properties that have to be valued. So of all the residential properties valued in Trinidad, in existence in Trinidad and Tobago, only about 200,000 properties have been valued. I am asking the minister today, and I intend to pursue it. MP Padarat spoke a lot about freedom of information this morning, and I have been in contact with eminent senior counsel, and I've been asking for his assistance and his advice. And I intend to file a freedom of information application to find out where are those 200,000 properties located. And I want the breakdown by municipal corporation and by district. Because I do not believe that the rollout of this entire valuation process has been fair. I do not believe that it is fair for a government to start telling people that you must pay a tax by the 30th of September, some people, when some people's properties have not yet been valued. And that is information that we intend to seek and we intend to put into the public domain if it is that they will provide it to us. Of course, we know they have a tendency to resist these freedom of information applications and we will have to take them to court. But I have plenty court clothes, even in my, I can still fit into some of it, and I intend to go all the way to pursue these avenues for transparency and to bring the information to the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. When you talk about due process and fairness in a piece of legislation, you must look at the mechanisms that are put into place. What existed before is that you can file an objection with the Evaluation Division, and if you did not have the result that you wanted, you could then go to the Tax Appeal Board. Now, the Tax Appeal Board is a functioning quasi-judicial body. They have been hearing appeals for as long as I could remember in relation to income tax, corporate tax, and so on. IMBED came to the Parliament and removed the jurisdiction of the Tax Appeal Board, an independent, autonomous body that is there and functional, and created this concept of a tribunal, a valuations tribunal. To date, that valuations tribunal has not been appointed. Now, because of pressure from the opposition and because we are continuously raising it, he's saying a month or so they will come. But let me explain something to you with this whole valuation objection process. Whether you are in the before the commissioner, whether you are before the valuation tribunal whenever they come into existence, or whether you go before the third level, which is the High Court. What information is the citizen armed with in order to challenge a valuation? And I asked myself this because I raised it in the Senate debate, and I said, all you get, and I told Minister, but I referred to my own valuation. I got a valuation of my annual rental value with a reference to a deed number, and that was it. There was no further information to inform me or to inform any citizen of this country via that valuation notice how they arrive at that valuation. What did you consider? So when I am going to mount the valuation, what do I say? I don't agree with this because I don't like it, because I don't think it's reasonable. What are my grounds? I can't know what grounds upon which I wish to object if you don't tell me the grounds upon which you came to your decision. That is a basic, fundamental, underlying principle of due process, that you will allow someone and arm the citizen. When the state is coming against the citizen to make an imposition such as this, you must arm the citizen with sufficient information that if they wish to challenge it and they wish to make use of the challenge process and the due process provisions within a piece of law, that they are armed with the information. Well, I got my answer by, unfortunately, I torture myself sometimes listening to these conversations with the Prime Minister. And Colm Imbert mounted a public platform and actually said, and he said it very quietly in the Senate as well. I think when he's dealing with the independent senators, he likes to say things quietly and very demurely and, hope that they don't catch on to it. But he made mention as well. But he went on the platform and said it. If you want to challenge a valuation, you must bring a private valuation report. Now, I don't want to say fall off my chair because that's too much in the news now, but I was shocked that the Minister of Finance would actually go and say that the only way the citizen of this country who is aggrieved by a decision of the Commissioner of Valuations can successfully mount a challenge to the valuation of their property, to the annual rental value, is by going and obtaining a private valuation. So I said, you know what, we need to explore this some more. I remember getting a valuation done when I was purchasing property. I remember what it cost. I'm sure many people who have ever purchased property, and those are the people affected, of course, by this, would recall that process and the costs associated with it. And I've been making inquiries, and an industry standard for valuation reports, whether it is for capital value or annual rental value, starts at $2,000. $2,000. And it goes up from there based on whatever they determine the value of your property to be. It will be calculated as a percentage of the value of your property. I think 0.25% is the industry standard. So imagine, whilst telling you that they are coming to tax your property, that you must pay it by the 30th of September, they send you a one sheet of paper saying that this is what we have come up with, and they give you absolutely no information, no justification. They never came into your home. They sent someone to stand up on the curbside and, conduct a scan of your property from the roadway and come up with a valuation. They are saying to you, you must acquire a private valuation in order to mount a challenge against the decision of the Commissioner of Valuations. Trinidad and Tobago, we have reached the stage of tyranny. We have reached the stage of tyranny with this PNM government, and I want to say to you today, it is time for them to go. They must go, because we cannot just stand here and watch them impose these types of draconian measures upon citizens of Trinidad and Tobago with no relief possible. Now, the other issues that I want to raise apart from that, the Attorney General stood up in Parliament and said that everything I said in my Senate debate was lies. Well, I want to tell the Attorney General that no court, locally or internationally, ever found me guilty of withholding information and put me out. So he's the last person who should be calling anybody a liar. But he said that I lied because I said it could take up to 6 years to resolve your valuation, and in that period of time you had to pay your taxes. And he quoted from a particular one clause, one snippet, which said that they must respond to you within a year when you file your valuation. That is in fact, when you file your objection, that is in fact, ladies and gentlemen, not the law. What it says is that they should respond to you within a year, and if you get no response, well then you can go ahead to escalate to the next level, which is the valuation tribunal, the non-existent valuation tribunal. And there's absolutely no rules or regulation governing that tribunal because it is not even in existence as yet. So we don't know how long they will take or if there will be a time cap. And after that, the next level that you must move to is the High Court. And if you could find anybody in this High Court who could tell you that you will have something wrapped up within 1 year of challenging the state, particularly on a valuation objection, well, I will give you a prize, because everybody knows that litigation takes numerous years to go through the High Court system, and that is the third tranche in this entire system. So I want to tell the Attorney General, don't play smart with foolishness, not when it comes to me, because I could read the law and understand it, something which I think you have a challenge doing, and your track record has proven that you have challenges in that regard. I don't have similar challenges. My memory is quite intact, and I know what the law says because I've read it numerous times and I've studied it. The other thing that I want to raise today that I think it is very important that the citizens really become aware of, particularly as we go into this election year, is in that last set of amendments that were brought by by Minister Imbert and that we debated in the Senate last week. And it seems very innocuous, which is that he has made a change saying that the minister can make amendments and that it will be by negative resolution instead of affirmative resolution. Those amendments to the schedules of the Property Tax Act include the rates. So, for example, how he had to come to the Parliament to amend the rate from 3% to 2%, he has changed the law to say that he will no longer have to do that he will be able to sit in his office and do it by negative resolution. And if anybody wants to raise an objection, they can file a motion in the Parliament, and within 40 days, they have 40 days to bring it, it will be debated and so on and so forth. I want to make the point that the entire independent, almost the whole independent bench raised a concern about this, because matters of taxation should never be dealt with outside of the Parliament. So in addition to the opposition, all but one independent senator raised that as a serious issue. Most of the independent bench, I think it was one voted with them, the rest abstained, and one very brave soul decided that he would vote with the opposition against these amendments, because I think specifically that particular clause caused some consternation amongst the independent bench. So this is not just the UNC having a problem with it, it is also the independent senators who also raised this. The fact of the matter is that IMBUD wants total control over the rate of taxation. And I want to sound the alarm today in relation to certain comments made by the minister in response to the concerns raised by Senator Timal. Senator Timal, independent Senator Timal, stated in the House that he had concerns in the Senate, that he had concerns about the minister being able to amend the rate of taxation. Minister Imbert, in his winding up, said that he would consider, because Minister Timal proposed it, that perhaps there could be a cap on that power of the minister to change the rate of the taxation. Minister Imbert said that in the finance bill to come, he will consider it, and he gave an undertaking that he will in fact introduce that cap at 10%. Listen to me very carefully, Trinidad and Tobago. He will cap his power to increase the taxes on your home on his own volition without any recourse to the Parliament at 10%. I repeat again, when people show you who they are, believe them the first time. But if you don't believe them the first time, like what they did in 2018 with bringing all these changes, believe them the second time. Because I am warning you that the minute an election is over, and I will repeat what MP Padarat said, if people put God out of their thoughts and elect this government again, be prepared to pay anywhere up to 10% of taxes on residential properties. Be prepared that that rate you will wake up one morning and all it is required for Minister Imbert to do is to sit in his office and sign it and publish it in the Gazette, and it will take effect, because he has changed the law by way of those amendments brought last week to the Senate to say that he will now have power to do it without any recourse to the Parliament. You will wake up one day and find yourself mama-guyed again by a PNM government that will tell you that they are coming with a 33 and a third percent reduction from 3% to 2%. If you put God out your thoughts and re-elect them, you will wake up after that election to hear that it is somehow needed for them to get their hands on your money and get their hands on your property, and they will increase that rate from anywhere 5, 7, 9, and even up to 10%. If Minister Imbert is so convinced right now that he can function with a reduction of 3% to 2%, why is he creating a cap of up to 10%? He must cap the residential property tax at the 2% that it has been reduced to via this bill. If it is that they are saying that they are doing so to ease the burdens of citizens, he must not be able to unilaterally sit in his office and increase that rate from anywhere from 1% to 10%. That is unconscionable, and that type of power in the hands of a minister should never be allowed in a democratic society, and that is what we stand for. There are a number of other issues I want to raise. Persons have been reaching out to me to find out more about the power when I spoke about the powers of the state to go against your property. I want to wrap up quickly because I know we are running a little bit late, but I think that this is important for people to know and to understand. there was I've posted this on my Facebook page actually, where someone who belongs to the Revenue Authority said that the Revenue Authority will be trying to ensure greater compliance with the law. And the law is, and they can deflect how much they want. The fact is, the Property Tax Act contains provisions whereby if taxes remain outstanding for a period of 2 years, the state can exercise what is called the power to distrain. And that power to distrain means that they can actually seize what is in law referred to as chattels, which are things not attached to the property. So when you hear MP Saddam Hussein, myself and others talking about your bed and your fridge and your stove, those are chattels that belong to your home. They can have that power to seize. They can also, after a period of 5 years, move against your property to have it sold if taxes remain unpaid. I raise this to tell you that one of the greatest concerns that I have, and I promised them that if they went on to invoke this power, that I would see them in court, and I make that commitment to the people of Trinidad and Tobago today, that the United National Congress will challenge any move by this government to initiate the power to distrain or the power to seize property whilst people have objections pending. Because you see, you cannot on the one hand say that I have implemented an objection process which can take any amount of time. We don't have to, this is the lies that they are putting forward, that you have to get a decision in a year. You don't have to. The Valuations Commissioner can just not respond to you, and then you have to take it to the tribunal and to the High Court. And whilst you are battling against the state, hopefully armed with your private valuation if you can afford it, they can actually, you have to either pay the taxes or they can move to exercise the power of distrain and sale against your property. And I find that to be, again, the signs of utter tyranny on the part of this government. I am saying today that if this government is interested in a fair rollout of taxation in relation to people's property, you must have in place a provision whereby there is a stay on the accrual of interest and penalties if someone files an objection. You must have a stay on the accrual of interest and penalties if someone is going through the objection process, especially if they have taken it before the tribunal or the High Court. You must not exercise any powers against a person's property while they have an objection pending. You must allow due process to take place. This government has a problem with due process and the respect for people's constitutional rights to the enjoyment of property and other rights. But I say no more. I say no more to that. We have had enough, and we will not stand by and watch you move against property. They are touting this idea that pensioners will be able to get relief if it is they apply, if they cannot afford to pay property tax, you can apply for a deferral. I want to make it clear to you, a deferral is not an exemption. The taxes to be paid will continue to run as a charge against your property. If you are 60 years old today and you are a pensioner and you cannot afford to pay your property tax and you ask for a deferral, but you happen to live until you are 70 years old, before they put you 6 feet into the ground, your heirs, your children, your grandchildren, they will be faced with 10 years worth of property tax mounted against them if they are to inherit your property. They will not be able to inherit that property because there will be a charge against the property. So the entire probate process and transferring process and all of that will not be able to take place after they probate your estate. They cannot get the property transferred to them unless they pay off the taxes. And the minister says, well, they could also come now and say, well, we have been suffering from hardship and so on. But you know what Minister Imbert wants you to do? He wants you to come on your hands and knees before him as Lord and Master of the Treasury and his self-appointed Trinidad and Tobago Revenue Authority that he's so committed to rolling out, and beg for an exemption. And it is at their discretion. You're not entitled to it. You're not entitled to that deferral. And again, there is no exemption. I'm using the wrong word myself. It's not an exemption. It is a deferral. That's what the law says. So even if your children and your grandchildren who might have lost their jobs and they cannot afford the 10 years of tax that would have accrued against your property, if they want to get a deferral, all that will happen is it will continue to run against the property. It will continue to run against the property, and at some point in time, it will either have to be paid or they will put up your property for sale. I want to warn persons in that age group of 60 and 70 years old who live in areas just outside the cities the Cipero streets and the Rushwood streets of San Fernando, the Woodbrooks and the St. James and those areas, that this is a mechanism by which PNM friends, family, and financiers will be lining up like Kobo waiting for you to close your eye to get their hands on your very valuable property. Properties that in the 1920s and 30s, you and those who generations before you struggled to acquire, which has now, due to the development of the area and the expansion of the cities into those areas where you still live, through no fault of your own, property values have risen. You are going to face the brunt of these provisions where your properties are going to end up on auction. And we know how those auctions go, state auctions, and we know who are the persons who are going to be acquiring those very valuable properties when your children cannot afford to meet the bills that you might have to end up leaving for them if you ask for a deferral. So we raise all of these matters to simply put the population on notice as to what the types of mechanisms this government has put into place to get absolute control over your property. I want to say today that we are going, in the days to come, we will have via our social media pages and even the pages belonging to and all different forms of communication that you may have with your MPs and your councillors, we are going to be disseminating some information to assist you, at least point you in the direction of where you can file your objections. I have been assisting a number of people with filing objections. It is very unfortunate I had to raise it in the Parliament and directly with the Minister of Digitalization to get BIR's form working, but it is now working. And we would try our best to help you. Another thing that I have given an undertaking to do, and I have spoken to Senior Counsel about it, is that I am going to assist the party and some of the attorneys in the party. We are going to formulate some questions which members of the population can use if you wish to file a Freedom of Information request and obtain information about the valuation in relation to your specific home. So for those persons who have received 2 valuations with different PIN numbers, for those who find it to be very inconsistent, for those who are saying that they live in houses that are identical like townhouses or HCC houses and so on, and they're getting very different valuations from your neighbors and so on, if you would like to get more information as to who visited your home, what they did, what they observed, and what was the basis upon which they came to the decision to give you this valuation notice of your annual rental value being whatever it is, we will assist you by putting the information out there that you can use to file a Freedom of Information request with the Commissioner of Valuations and ask them to provide you with that information. I do not think it is conscionable or it is fair or it is in any way suitable in a democratic society to tell people that you must go and procure a private valuation report if you want to mount a challenge against a decision of the state. I believe the state has a duty to provide that information. And of course, good UNC passed legislation, freedom of information is the key to getting that done. So we will endeavor to assist you as best as we can moving forward. But ladies and gentlemen, I just want to remind you, I hear people asking, when is the protest, when is the march, when are we going to riot? And Minister Imbert famously talked about people, we haven't rioted yet, and we haven't rioted. You will have the opportunity within a year to come to riot right here. And if you do not riot with this index finger, be prepared, be very prepared to face all of the consequences that MP Padarath and I have outlined today for you in relation to the quality of your life, the enjoyment of your property, the enjoyment of basic facilities like water, electricity, the security of your data, and other things under a PNM administration. The time to riot with your index finger is fast approaching, and we must be prepared, and you must rally behind us as we remove this undemocratic, tyrannical government from power. Thank you very much. I think now we can take some questions from the media.
Thank you, Senator Lutchmedial. And now we open the floor to take questions from members of the media.
All right. Hi, Doris Polo from CNC3. And Padarath, you made mention when you started the conference that you wanted the report, that the independent investigation into what happened with TSDT to be one made public then laid in Parliament and then sent to a JSC. But you also noted that you do not have faith that the report is something that you all will have trust in. So with that in mind, why ask for it to go through that process if you do not even have faith in the report? Why not continue to clamor and insist on an alternative independent investigation?
Well, what it does is two bites of the cherry. One, we have been calling for an independent investigation when this matter first arose. But in light of the minister appointing an investigator, commissioning this report, what it then does by allowing it to go to the Parliament, being digested by the population, once you send it to the Joint Select Committee has the powers to look at the report and then call persons, including the minister. You would have recalled that I raised the issue of the minister appearing before the Joint Select Committee. Since then to now, the minister has not appeared before the Joint Select Committee. So while we have concerns about the report itself in terms of the report being sanitized, etc., what we are also saying is that the Joint Select Committee will be able to call those persons. They will be able to look at the report, digest the report, analyze the report, but also there will be a public ventilation of the report if it goes to the Joint Select Committee proceedings. Because what you will see happen is that you will see the acting CEO as well as the former CEO being called in to the Joint Select Committee and having to answer questions on the contents of that report. So that's why we are calling for this process in light of the report being, it is already due, and that's why we are saying send it to the Parliament, make it public, but it is really the Joint Select Committee that will allow a full ventilation of that matter and may actually be able to satisfy some of the concerns, the questions, the queries, but also satisfy the appetite of the national community whose data has been breached, over 1 million of them. So I think going through that process and eventually going to the Joint Select Committee will be able to address some of the issues that we have raised.
Now you also spoke about certain members of the board being believed to at least be financiers of the PNM. Do you have any proof of that?
Well, what we have raised, and as I said to you, we are doing several freedom of information and we are cross-referencing some of these freedom of information. A lot of that information, as we get it, we will share with you. I only got this freedom of information this morning in my hands. So as the information comes forward, we will share with you. But the collusion is very, very evident. The collusion, you look at the police commissioner herself, the situation with that, taking somebody at the bottom of the list to make them the commissioner of police. Then you have a TSTT, somebody at the bottom of the list to make them the acting CEO. There appears to be several collusions at state enterprises and at top institutions, particularly what are supposed to be independent institutions. And therefore that collusion is very, very evident. And as we continue to connect the dots through the freedom of information, Senator Lutchmedial and Senator and MP Saddam Hussein have been very, very instrumental in a lot of coordinating that information. But as we get it, we will share it with the public. But the collusion is very, very evident from what we have gotten thus far. And going forward, we will place in the public domain further evidence of things that we have been saying.
Yes, morning.
Yeah, so I just want to make sure I heard correctly when you were speaking earlier about the 10% cap that Minister Inglewood has put. So is it actually saying that you believe that that is the intention after the election, if they were to bring it up to that point?
I certainly believe that the reduction from 3% to 2% is an election gimmick, and I expect that it would be increased, and that the fact that the minister wants to give himself that power, he has brought no actual justification for that amendment to give himself that power without recourse to the Parliament, none whatsoever. Member after member of both the opposition and independent bench raised concerns about it in the debate. Nearly everybody spoke in our debate in the Senate. We went till 11 o'clock in the night or something like that. And everybody raised that concern, and the minister could not say why he felt the need to remove that parliamentary oversight for such an amendment. I could only infer from those things that the intention is, and then to say in response to the suggestion of a cap, that he will cap it at 10%. To me, that suggests that there is an intention, and yes, I do believe that the intention is that they will raise it, whether to the maximum of 10% or but significantly higher. If it's not back to the 3, maybe higher than the 3%, because this government appears very desperate to raise money. We saw it when they came to the parliament to give themselves the ability to borrow another $10 billion. In 9 years, they have no accomplishments to show. They need money to finance an election campaign. I even heard in one of their public meetings, they're talking about now they're going to publish information to make the public aware about property tax. The place to make the public aware and to explain to the public the intricacies of property tax and how it's operating and all of those things is via your ministries and your departments. Why do they need to now go and spend money via media houses and advertising agencies and so on to educate the public on property tax? That is to finance election propaganda. And that is what they have been doing. And that's what all of this and this mad rush and scramble in the face of inconsistencies to roll out property tax is really just their way of raising campaign finance.
Okay, so what do you think would have been maybe a better alternative to that 10% cap? Is it still including a cap, or is there an alternative system?
I believe that the system as is, where any amendment to the schedules, when you're dealing with matters of taxation, you must have recourse to the parliament. So the better thing is that you should, in fact, anytime the minister wants to address, change the rate of taxation, whether it is up, down, residential, commercial, industrial, whatever it is, he should come to the parliament and let the elected and appointed representatives of the people have their say, at least. That's what it should be. So, any
Senator
questions?
Lutchmedial,
Yes?
You spoke about a number of issues as it relates to people challenging the valuation of their properties, and it seems as though based on the picture you've painted, there's an expectation that there could be a laundry list of litigation against the state because there's no tribunal set up. They're going to end up going into the High Court, and you're also going to do an FOIA to find out where these homes have been valued. Is the UNC preparing itself to assist the population with that sort of legal?
You're already doing it.
Well, I think we're already doing it. There's a lot of free legal advice being given out by the UNC. No, I mean, we've really worked hard through the offices of our MPs and councillors to assist people as best as possible. Litigation is something you need to understand. You can deal with big issues. So, for example, in 2017, when there was an attempt to amend the valuation form in-house and just send out a form and tell people that if you don't fill out this form by a specific date, that they will fine you $5,000, I think it was. We took that to court. That's a policy position that the Commissioner of Valuations was actually trying to implement. We took it to court. We lost at the High Court. We won in the Court of Appeal, right? Before the decision of the Court of Appeal could be delivered, they came to the Parliament and amended the law. But we stopped them in their tracks in 2017 when they had people lining up and trying to force them to file an illegal valuation form. Right. Those types of issues, yes, the UNC, I was very proud to be part of that litigation together with Mr. Ram Logan, and it worked out well. So issues like that, yes, I believe the UNC will be prepared to mount those challenges. When it comes to the individual challenges as to the actual assessment of your individual property, we will assist, and those could be by the thousands, of course. We don't have a culture of litigation in this country when it comes to things like class action lawsuits and that sort of thing. We don't really have those things taking place. But we would assist anybody with, at least if they wish to mount a challenge under the law as it is right now, to challenge the particular valuation, we will assist as best as we could to help them with the documents, guide them, and so on as we go forward. I want to make it abundantly clear though, by offering our assistance with the objection process and so on, we are by no means saying that this property tax should continue. Our absolute bottom line, overarching position is that this entire process needs to be scrapped and there must be no property tax. So do not, I don't want anybody to misconstrue my words. I don't want the PNM to go out there and say, well, you know, they love to say that we are talking out of the two sides of our mouth, although, I mean, that's like, you know, as the old people say, pot telling kettle the bottom black. But at the end of the day, it is absolutely our definitive position that there should be no property tax and this entire process should be scrapped. However, in the face of persons who are very concerned, who are very afraid of the consequences which may follow, and I've outlined some of those consequences today, and they wish to file an objection and they wish to clarify the position in relation to the property tax assessments that they've gotten, we will provide as much assistance as we can.
I have one more question for you. You mentioned the 200,000 homes that were valued as opposed to, I think, about 200,000 more that were. Mm-hmm. Are you concerned at all that, because you said it's unfair, that perhaps it's UNC areas? Is that what you're implying?
I don't know what areas they are in, but that's why I said Freedom of Information will provide that information. Let me put it to you this way. If myself, MP Padarath, and yourself were all living within the city of San Fernando, and we were living in 3 different areas. I'm living in Lesafo East, MP Padarath living in Marabella West, and you are living in Springvale Paradise. And I get a valuation and I am told that I must pay my tax by the 30th of September. The government's supposed policy is that the regional corporation needs this money to fix roads, to fix drains, to deal with flooding, to pick up garbage, to maintain the cemetery and all of those things. Is it fair that by the 30th of September this year, I should pay property tax where I live in Lesafo East, but MP Padarath living in Marabella West and you living in Springvale Paradise, getting your garbage picked up, getting your all the facilities, driving on the same roads, all of those things, but you are not being assessed, and we don't know when the remainder of homes and so on will be assessed and people will be given these valuation notices. So it would be essentially that for a calendar year or a taxation year that some people are paying taxes on homes who live in the same area, and people who are using the same facilities that they are supposedly funding with this tax would not be paying any taxes. You know, that's the unfairness of it all. So I don't want to say without, I like to be armed with evidence, but I would like to see the breakdown of where these particular valuations took place. I would be asking for it not just by corporation, but by municipal districts to see where the valuation division has placed somewhat of its focus in terms of rolling out the exercises and why it hasn't taken place and when it is supposed to take place in the other areas. But be that as it may, it doesn't matter, because when the UNC takes government, we will scrap property tax. So it doesn't matter when and how they intend to roll it out. There will be no property tax once a general election is called and the UNC regains power in this country.
I just want to ask one more question. This is a bit off the topic, but if you'd be willing to comment on what the National Security Minister said yesterday, while he is responsible for the SSA, you can't blame him for what happened there.
I have such low expectations of Fitzgerald Hines that nothing surprises me anymore that he would say. What I would say is that I find the government engaging in a tit-for-tat with Gary Griffiths is a poor but somewhat, you know, it's a form of deflection from their failure to deal with crime. I cannot believe that 2 ministers of government holding 2 senior cabinet portfolios would spend more than an hour, I think it was, close to 2 hours, talking about an individual who is now, because I think he announced his intention to fight a particular seat, is now a political opponent. It's very Maduro-like when a government uses its power to try to attack its political opponents and to and that's what they've been engaging in. And, look, the UNC and all of their issues for the Commissioner of Police that they appointed and what they want to do and so on. Like I say, I have low expectations of Hines. I found it passing strange that someone of the caliber of Dr. Amory Brown would participate in the dissemination of information that was supposedly contained in a diplomatic note now some years later in order to, engage in some tit for tat and some he say, she say thing with Gary Griffith. I want to hear about serious issues of national security. I want to hear about what is being done to preserve the integrity of the intelligence being collected by the SSA. And Hines will actually come out and say that he didn't know what was going on in the SSA a week after he says he does not know about a unit within the special branch called the RAU, which we have information is collecting intelligence on citizens as well and is very well equipped with intelligence. Only for, I think it was Dr. Munilal bringing the departmental notes setting up that particular unit. So at this point in time, I think what Hines knows is not what Hines doesn't know is not the question, is what does he know? Because he seems to know nothing. He feigns ignorance about everything, but then he will mount a platform to talk about everything that he knows about his now political opponent, Gary Griffith. It's a crying shame that that is where national security has reached in this country. And if the safety and security of citizens in this country is in the hands of someone like that, well, I fear for all of our lives.
I just wanted to raise one other issue in response to a question by Doris in terms of our call for this report to go to the GSC and the Parliament. What it does as members of Parliament, elected members of Parliament, those of us who shadow these portfolios, it gives us the opportunity to challenge and interrogate the report. And that is what the Joint Select Committee and the Parliament will be allowed to do, because those are the powers that we have as members of Parliament. That is the most appropriate place for us to raise those concerns and those issues. So while yes, we have challenges with how the report came about in terms of the minister appointing the investigation, my main issue was also the minister is at the center of this thing. So therefore it also allows the minister to ventilate or to be interrogated inside of the Parliament and also inside of the GSC. So having raised several critical issues that are affecting Trinidad and Tobago at this time, I want to thank members of the media and those of you who have logged on various platforms for joining us as we continue to be your voice on critical issues that are affecting the country. We will be sharing on our social media platforms our next media conferences together with the UNC's Monday night report, so you can look forward and stay tuned for that. So thank you for your attention and thank you for joining us this morning. Thank you.